This is The Dish Pig. I'm your host, Nick Sherry. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's Christmas. It's also the final episode of 2021. So a big thank you to all of our guests who joined us on the podcast this year. It's been brilliant to chat to you all. If you celebrate Christmas, have a very Merry Christmas. If you don't, enjoy your Saturday. And if you're looking for any last-minute Christmas gifts, why not share this podcast with a friend and subscribe? You can also follow us on Instagram at _dish_pig. So this week, is there such thing as a perfect pub? Yes, is the simple answer. There are many, of course. From the Lincoln Hotel in Melbourne, to the Running Horses in Mickleham Village in Surrey, to the Chip Inn in Chicago. What about McSorley's in NYC? The Napier in Melbourne? The list goes on. The Wellington Arms ties so many things together, from a cozy bar, a beautiful dining room, a sprawling beer garden, exquisite food, the best cup of tea in the world, and rooms to rest your head after you've eaten and drunk yourself silly. Today we get to meet the gentlemen responsible for this oasis, Jason King and Simon Page. British food writer Giles Coren wrote that he would gladly stay at the Wellington Arms forever. He's not wrong. So let's get into it. Okay, here we are. Thank you, Simon and Jason, for joining me. It's a pleasure to talk to you both, all the way from Hampshire, England, correct?
That's right, yep.
Well, we can just jump straight into my stock standard first question, which was, what was the last thing you guys cooked for yourself?
We just had steak for dinner last night, and I made fondant potatoes and a bit of a crazy salad. We got home kind of late. Simon and I have two foster children, and dinner has to be on the table at 6 o'clock. So it was a bit of a dash.
I was going to say, so Jason, being the chef at the Wellington Arms, like, do you actually, I mean, with Sunday and Mondays being your day off, do you actually ever get a day off, or are you still cooking at home as well?
I cook all the time. And it's funny, in the old days when it was just Simon and me, we could sort of just have soup and be a pretty easy dinner. But now with the kids, it's like, it's a full-on affair because they eat as much as a grown adult. They're just crazy. I seem to cook all the time. I can see why the deli works so well, because I think people just get sick and tired of having to do it. Being a chef, I love cooking, but these kids, they eat nonstop. I'm looking for the day where they can fend for themselves.
How about you, Simon? What was the last thing that you cooked for yourself or the family?
He's a breakfast chef.
I cooked porridge for breakfast this morning.
Oh, beautiful!
My contribution to dinner last night was rice pudding.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Very simple fare.
Well, I mean, it's been. I think, Simon, you were telling me when we spoke leading up to recording that it was 2005 when you guys acquired the pub. Is that correct? That's
right. Yes, October 2005.
Wow. So it's been a long time now.
Yes, we remember it well.
But I guess, I mean, it'd be great to kind of jump back in time a bit, and Jason, we can start with you, because you're originally from Australia. Is that?
Yeah, I'm Melbourne.
Two Melbourne guys. Perfect.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about, where you grew up and how you actually got on the journey to becoming a chef.
Oh, well, I had this mad idea that I was going to become a vet, and I sadly wasn't quite bright enough. And my parents went away on a holiday to Turkey, and when they came back from Turkey, I dropped out of university and I was working in a restaurant, which was a bit of a shock
right.
for them. It was a bit of a strange way it all sort of happened. It wasn't a lot of thought put involved in it, but a bit embarrassing story actually. Should have thought about that a bit more.
I mean, do you remember that first restaurant that you were working in and what you were doing?
Yeah. I was working. You probably know it. It was called Fanny's. It was owned by Gloria Staley.
Okay.
It was in Lonsdale Street, and it was, I think, the only three-headed restaurant in Australia, I think, at that time. And she was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
She had this Cartier bracelet that made, those three rings, and it would make a certain clunk whenever she moved, and we could hear her coming a mile off. And it was a bit like the sound you'd sort of hear. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the film, and you hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was just. I'm surprised that didn't happen when she came in. She was tough. She was really tough.
Have you taken that through like to later life, where you like hear the kind of jingling of jewelry that it kind of gives you kind of flashbacks?
Not
or
at
PTSD?
all. Not at all. No, I think the people I work for were pretty much what would I say? A good example of how not to run a restaurant. Although things in the old days when I was younger, because I'm almost 50 now, were pretty brutal compared to what it's like these days. I think if any of the staff that work for me these days, who are all pretty much millennials, would be crushed under the responsibilities that I think we endured when we were younger. It would. I'm just thinking about it now. She was a tough lady. We had this maitre d' called Claude Verasea, who was just amazing. I remember he took the top of a bottle off once with a sword and popped it out the window. I think it was champagne. I think he was pretty cool. He was amazing. Yeah, he could spot a girl's perfume a mile off. He knew exactly what it was. He had an incredible range. He was a very stylish chap. Yeah.
And so
if you've been to the restaurant, you would know either of those two people, because they were quite a personality in those days. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. But that was like that was like your culinary school that kind of kicked things off, or?
Yeah, I was 19, just, I think. Just 19, I think, when I was working in there. And I was pretty wet behind the ears. And I went to a private school my mum struggled to send me to, called Trinity, and then working in a kitchen was a bit of a shock. It was definitely different. Yeah. I
was just across the road from you at
no way.
At Xavier College.
Oh, next door! Wow.
Yeah.
Xavier was a big school. It was right next to mine. They were tough. I think your school, they still cane kids. Is that right? Did they do that? I'm sure that was always a rumor at my school, going, that those Xavier boys are tough.
I think I can't confirm or deny that, but I would hope not these days.
Wow.
So I mean, I guess having started off in a pretty brutal environment to kind of get your feet wet and get on the path of becoming a chef. You weren't discouraged at all. It was just you kind of fell in love with it, and you realized that this is what you were going to do with the rest of your life.
Oh, I think I was good at it. I mean, I always cooked when I was younger. I always cooked. Right. My mum was a single parent. She got home late and stuff, so we always had these ladies who would sort of look after us on the way home from school. We're not like talking the full-on nanny affair. It's just ladies of the village kind of thing. And I remember Mrs. Fox, who she had no taste, so she couldn't taste or smell, and she would often mix the sugar and the salt up. So we'd have hamburgers made out of sugar and salty pudding and stuff. And I think at an early age I realised we could do it better here. Yeah. This has got to end. So I always cooked some pretty crazy stuff. From early on, I think, just to fend off starvation, I think. So I was always interested in cooking.
It's funny you mentioned that about mixing the salt and sugar up, because a friend of mine, we were making frozen daiquiris one night, and it was her turn to make the next round, and she came out with the tray, and we all started drinking them, and we were like, something is a little bit off here. And she had 100% put about 1 cup of sugar, of salt, I think, into this blender and blended it up. But it was,
It's not a good experience, is it? No,
It's not. But it's a good lesson. You know, it teaches us something. You know, you'll never. I'm sure in the kitchen. I'm sure in the kitchen of Fanny's, if you screwed up in that way, you'd never make that mistake again.
Oh no, Jesus! Andy Hill was the second chef then in those days, and he was brutal. He'd clean the cool room out forever with a toothbrush. He was a tough chap. He was sort of ex-army, and he came up with new and creative ways of making your life unpleasant if you stepped out of line.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And Simon, how about you? Tell us a bit about where you grew up and how you kind of fell into the hospitality industry yourself.
Okay. Well, my first taste of it was I was a barman at a local pub when I was 18 in England, and then throughout university, I suppose I dabbled working at restaurants here and there in London. And
you worked for Bibendum, didn't you?
Yeah, I worked at Bibendum on the Fulham Road for a while, and then Jason and I met in Hong Kong, and I worked for a few restaurants in Hong Kong.
Oh wow! Okay.
It's such a good profession to fall back on, and then Jason and I moved from Hong Kong to England, and we wanted to run a pub, and so we gave up all of our other jobs to open and run a pub.
Wow!
We went and worked for a friend's pub for a few days just to remember how to do it.
Oh, okay.
And get back into the swing of it, pulling pints and talking to customers.
Yeah.
And then opened our own. Yeah.
It's a nice little, it was a nice friend to let you do that, just to kind of get a little bit of a taste of it, just in case you wanted to maybe back
it was
out.
Too late at that stage.
So back to Hong Kong very quickly. I mean, what were you both doing there, and how did you meet, and what kind of on that path?
Yeah, sure. I went to Hong Kong having left university, having graduated from university, because there was nothing better to do in England at the time.
Yeah.
And I got given the opportunity to go out there and stay with family. And I ended up working in restaurants to go traveling. And I was there in the end for about 8 or 9 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And met Jason in the final year that I was there.
My story is a bit worse. I went to go and work for...
It's a good story.
I left working for Paul Bocuse after Fanny's. I went to Melbourne after Fanny's. I went to work for Paul Bocuse, and that was pretty great for about 3 years. And then after that, I accepted a job. Well, actually, John Turode actually came to Melbourne and hired a whole bunch of Australians to work in the restaurant called Mezzo.
Okay.
That they were opening up in Wardour Street in London. It's a really big deal. It was the second restaurant that Terence Conrad had after Quaglino's. And none of us got work visas. And it was all over the papers because we all got arrested. And I was deported.
Shit.
Yeah, it really fucked up my life.
It was all supposed to be a perfect job, but they didn't do the paperwork.
Yeah, it really fucked up my life for a while, actually. And I think if I ever see John Turode, I think I'll rearrange his face. But it was it was really tough because we ended up getting deported. And it was really funny. It was just an embarrassing story. Is that the night before it all happened, I met some person at a club, and it was all nice and stuff. And then the following morning, I was put onto a plane in handcuffs, and there I met that person again, who happened to be serving on board the flight as a steward. And the first thing I said was, "I can explain." She looked sort of horrified at me, thinking, "Jesus Christ, what the hell's wrong with this one?" It wasn't a good story, but it was funny how it happened. So I arrived very drunk at Hong Kong airport. Because I think the steward felt sorry for me, so I got plastered on board the plane. Thank you, Richard Branson, for that. That was very kind of him. And so I got on. I got to Hong Kong and thought I'll buy a suit. You know, that's what they used to do in those days.
Oh yeah, go to a tailor and get some
yeah. So I sort of on the way there, I saw a restaurant that was pretty cool called, what was it called? Wyndham Street Thai, I think. And I had lunch there. and I met a guy there who was I think running it, and they offered me a job just like that. It was really funny because they were opening a new restaurant across the road, and they offered me a job, and so I started working for them sort of up to the next day. It was very strange how it happened.
Quick question: Did you get a work visa for Hong Kong?
Not for a few years.
Let's move over that one. Let's move over that.
Not for a few years. No, it was, not confused. Look, things were really different. This was way before 9/11 and stuff. So,
and before 97 as well.
And, all of that sort of stuff was
okay,
it was pretty easy in those days. Didn't pay off.
So you were supposed to go home, weren't you?
I was supposed to go
Melbourne,
home,
but just
didn't go home.
Stopped in Hong Kong.
Yeah, didn't go home for 7 years. It's pretty crazy.
So if you weren't deported from the UK, you never would have met Simon.
No, I probably wouldn't have. No, and I'm probably still working in a restaurant, maybe in the UK or whatever. Because I had a great time. The UK was amazing. Clubs were so different from being in Melbourne. Because Melbourne, in the old days, was, we had some good restaurants and stuff, but only very few.
Right.
And it was a bit, it was all a bit small, I suppose. And then arriving in London, it was just like, whoa, this is incredible. And I seemed to be always running up and down Wardour Street and having a great time after work. And it was terrific. I sort of blew through quite a lot of money very quickly. London's an expensive town to hang out in. And then I suppose just there wasn't really a lot of thought put involved. And I think after I left university and started cooking and things like that, I seemed to be there wasn't really a plan. It just I kept falling into things, and I've been very fortunate, I think.
Yeah.
Very lucky. It could have gone horribly wrong, I suppose, at any turn. But yeah, it always seemed to sort of work itself out.
And I mean, Simon, at any stage did you kind of think, was there a plan in the back of your head that you were like, okay, I'm here in Hong Kong, I'm working away, but I do want to, I do want to go home and maybe open up my own place. Was there anything kind of bubbling away in the back of your head or not?
No, very far from it. No, nothing at all.
Right.
No desire to own a restaurant.
No, you went. No. You moved to Hong Kong to stay in your brother's flat, I think. Didn't you?
Yeah,
and you never went home.
Yeah, I got into teaching in Hong Kong. I'm a musician, studied music at university, and so I was playing music in Hong Kong and came back to the UK to do a postgraduate in teaching, and so I then became a teacher in England.
Well, that's because Tony Blair changed the rules, didn't he? Do you remember you had to work for a year in a government school?
Yeah, I was going to do the year's qualification, then leave, and go back to Hong Kong,
where I was,
where Jason had taken on a flat, and we were going to move in together in Hong Kong. But in order to validate my qualification, I had to work for a year in a government school to finalise my qualification.
Yeah,
and so I had to stay.
Crazy
and then Jason left Hong Kong to join me in England.
Got it. Okay.
Because we had it sort of a year apart, and we had lots of fun holidays and stuff like that. But then it was like, is this going to be another year? I was like, oh shit.
So we, I taught I became assistant director of music at a boys' prep school in Reading. Jason was working here and there, and we had a very successful private catering company.
Okay.
On the side.
So we'd work every weekend.
Yeah.
Between our other jobs. Working for some very fabulous people, doing some amazing
crazy
parties.
Customers. Yeah.
And then we decided to give that all up, the teaching, the private catering, to open a pub.
Yes, that was quite a step.
And so that brings us to the Wellington Arms. So how did you decide to open a pub? How did you even go about finding one? Like, what was that whole process like?
We registered with quite a few agents.
We kept missing out though. We didn't have enough money. That was the problem.
Yeah, we didn't have any money, and we were just looking at pubs all the time. We wanted something.
Pubs were selling for about £1 million each those days. They were really busy.
Yeah.
Punch taverns and the like of them. They were buying them up every week. It was crackers. So the pub prices were just insane. So just a little teeny tiny pub was £1 million in those days. That's 15, 16 years ago. That's a long time. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we thought a pub was the way to go because it's relaxed, it's informal, it's very traditional English. It's a real British thing to do.
We'd been to a few really groovy ones.
Some really groovy pubs.
Yeah.
Much better. It's far more groovy than restaurants.
Yeah.
Pub was definitely the way to go. And
we heard of this one. This one had a lease, didn't it?
Yeah, and we were looking for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And we found the Wellington Arms at the end of that.
And I think we just went for a drink, and it was almost shut. It was shutting down, or it wasn't trading very well. And we thought it was great.
So much potential.
And the lease wasn't a huge amount of money. So we kind of, we just could have bought it really quickly.
It is.
Yeah.
Without a lot of thought. Yeah, it wasn't too well thought through, actually.
Yeah.
It was a pretty poor state when we got it.
I was going to say,
money on it ever since.
We started renting from the brewery. It was Punch Taverns at the time.
Yeah.
They're just a property company with expensive beer.
Uh-huh.
And we were asking them every 6 months, can we buy the freehold? Can we buy the freehold? And eventually I'd say, was it 5 years?
I think so.
In?
Yeah, let us buy it.
We made them an offer and we got to buy the freehold.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was called something else when you bought it, right?
No.
No, it's always been the Wellington Arms.
It's always been the Wellington Arms? Okay.
Yep.
I thought it was, I was looking up some stuff and I've got my wires crossed.
No, I think in about 1900 it used to be the New Inn.
Oh, yeah.
But I think pubs always called the New Inn when they opened, because there was a new one in the village. And then it became the Wellington Arms.
When was it built? Do you know?
About 1780.
Wow.
Grade 2 listed.
Supposedly
farmhouse.
That building out the back is the old hunting lodge, but never had that verified.
And we're talking just to kind of give ourselves a visual of the geographic location, where we're about an hour west of London.
That's right. Yeah, west of London, between Reading, Basingstoke, and Newbury.
There you go. Okay. And when you did take on the pub initially, was it just okay? Like we're going to have like you said, like an informal space where there's a pub, there's a restaurant, maybe a beer garden. Did you ever, because you now have accommodation there, like everything has kind of grown into something I think much bigger with your farm and all kinds of things. Did it just kind of grow organically?
Very much so. We
didn't have a clue what we were doing.
We'd have, although in Hong Kong there were 7 restaurants and I ran them. I was the boy in charge in those days. We started with 1 and we had 6 and a gay bar actually. I suppose the staff had to go somewhere for a drink, I think the boss said. So it was amazing. It was funny. We had like 15 managers who sort of run things and they're all gay. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
And the fights that would break out over paint color. It just took everything at work in those days took forever to do. It was beautiful. It was amazing. We had some really pretty buildings. But bloody hell, it was very funny. And so after running those places, I sort of thought, well, I'll be all right. It'll be fine. I'll be able to run it. And I think running a place of your own and having to run your own bookwork and employ staff and pay for them yourself is a very big difference between working for someone and actually owning it. It was a big culture shock. My mum actually came over from Australia to give us a hand because we were really in dire straits in the beginning. Yeah. We had a fire. We had some real problems in the beginning. Simon and I couldn't believe it.
You said there was a fire in the building that...
Yeah, we did. The fuse board caught fire one night.
Shit.
Yeah. It just did, and that causes some diffiefulty. Yeah.
And then boiler broke down.
The boiler broke down a couple of times.
So no heating, no hot water.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah.
So it had been a rental property. Nothing had been fixed properly for years.
Yeah.
And hence we were desperate to buy it, so we could then invest some money in the building.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was definitely an experience. So luckily my mum came over and she stayed for about 3 months. Mm-hmm. And she spent a lot of time telling us off. I remember because my mum's in retail at home and the leases in England are obviously, some of them are quite old fashioned the way they're written. And my mum came down the stairs one day and said, no son of mine would have signed a lease like this.
Oh, but yes, you did.
Too late.
Yeah, it was funny. I'm like, Mum, it's not a big deal. It's fine. Anyway, she was right. I should never have signed it. But anyway, that's all right. We own it now, so it's okay.
So the early days. I mean, at what stage did you kind of realize that, okay, look, we're starting to get the hang of this, where we know we're making great food. People are starting to notice what we've done here. When did things kind of start to?
Oh yeah, that's a good story.
I think about the same thing, aren't we?
That's I think a year in, we would clean out the chickens and stuff on Saturday lunchtimes, because we only had a couple of tables on Saturday lunch, so I could get in the kitchen and do a bit of cooking.
Saturday lunches were always quiet.
Yeah, they were really terrible in those days. Sunday lunch, Saturday was Saturday lunch was our dead day.
Right.
And just in the morning. So I could sort of clean the chickens out and do other silly things in the morning. And we had Giles Coren come to the pub about 2 or 3 weeks earlier for lunch. And it was a nice warm day, and it was
Sunday lunch.
Sunday lunch, that's right, Sunday lunch. Nice warm day, and he turned up in a huge camper van and parked and covered our whole car park. Actually, he just I think so. I don't think anyone else could get in.
And he was wearing a pink t-shirt, some canvas all-star shoes, and some really greedy sunglasses.
Yeah, and he just walked into the kitchen like he owned the place. It was really funny because the kitchen door opened out into the garden. Which I just always kept it open, and you could see into the kitchen and stuff. And I actually used to wave at people and stuff. So he just walked straight in and said, hello. And I was like, hello, can I help you? And he went, I'm here for lunch. And I went, oh, okay. You got a booking? And he went, no. And I went, oh, shit. We're pretty busy. But if you go to the bar and see my boyfriend, you might be able to get a table. He's a really good looking bloke. So I figured Simon would probably sort him out at the table. We didn't know who he was at all.
We had no idea.
We obviously we read the paper and stuff, but we didn't know it was a big deal.
This would have been in 2006, 2007, I think.
We were pretty stupid in the old days.
And the whispers were going around the garden. Is that the guy off the TV?
And we didn't get any of this. It was really weird.
This was before the iPhone, really. So you couldn't just get on your smartphone and Google.
Yeah.
And we had this thing in the toilet in the loo saying, 20 things you might not know about us, and what we do and stuff behind the scenes, and this is whatever we do, and we recycle and we do this and whatever. And he really liked it, so he pulled it off the wall and walked into the bar with Simon and said, can I talk to you about this list? I was like, who is this guy? So I didn't have a clue and didn't get any vibe off him that he was a reviewer. I mean, anybody else bloody should have, but we didn't. So he left. He got lunch. He got lunch.
He got a great lunch.
Okay.
And he came up at the end of the lunch and paid the bill. And I said, so are you the man off the TV?
Did you say that?
And he said, yeah, my name's Giles Coren. I write for the Times.
You never told me that. Oh.
You've got nothing to worry about. I've had a great lunch. Thank you very much. And then 3 weeks later, you never know when these things are going to go to press.
Yeah.
And it was published in the Saturday Times, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we got 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, yeah.
Wow.
From Giles Coren.
Which is far too generous, I must admit.
Which was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
It was really ridiculous.
And
we did some good things, though.
We had no idea the effects positive press would have on our business.
So we're out cleaning the chickens, and in the old days, we just took the phone out into the garden, and it was on hands-free, so, we could answer the book from out there. Because if
the phone ever rang.
We had about 300 chickens in those days.
Yeah.
So there was quite a bit of work to do. And then all of a sudden the phone rang, and we thought, we'll just go to answer machine. We'll get the next one. And then the next phone rang again. It was a bit weird. And then it rang again and again and again. And he and I are both looking at each other going, maybe one of us should stop what we're doing and go and answer the telephone. And it was just so many bookings because we had this great review and people were wanting to book up. And that worked for about a year. It never stopped ringing.
People even to this day come in for a meal and say, I've got this clipping on my notice board in the kitchen. And we've been desperate to come.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool picture. He had these belted Galloways that he was going to, so it's this really cute cartoon picture of a cow and him and a girl. This black and white cow. It's what a Belton Galloway looks like, you don't know. And so it's quite a cute ad, and for us, I suppose. And we got into this habit of sending Giles Coren a box of goodies from the pub to say, look, thanks very much because you did amazing things for our business. And he always writes back a nice card going, just my job, guys. Which is all a bit too cool. It's very funny. Yeah, he's a great guy. He did a lot for us. Yeah, so that's the thing that sort of springboarded us into where we are now, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Giles.
Thank you, Giles.
It's just, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's amazing that one great lunch for someone like that can just really, set you on.
Yeah, but can you imagine if I did the sort of Gordon Ramsay thing and told him to piss off out of the kitchen?
Get out of my kitchen.
He just wandered in. He was just like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm great. Hello. My name's Jay. Can I help? Yeah, he was a terrific guy. But it was funny that he just sort of wandered in and he didn't have a booking or anything. So imagine if we'd said, we were full or,
sent him away.
Yeah. We could be still cleaning the chickens out now.
and speaking of your chickens, I mean, you've got quite a
menagerie.
Talk us through like the other animals you've got on the. The
pandemic has been a bit of knock on. The animals, unfortunately. We had the bird flu problem to begin with. That wasn't fun. Right. And then all the chickens had to go indoors, and we didn't have an indoor place that we could put 300 chickens. But the farmer down the road did.
Okay.
So they all moved down to his big barn.
Yeah.
And so he was the recipient of about 300 chickens. He was very pleased. I was rather sad.
Pigs have been and gone, haven't they?
Pigs have been and gone. We've had lots of pigs. Pigs have been great fun because they're in the wood next door.
We don't keep them for too long.
Well, last time they got very big. We probably didn't keep them too long. They're always escaping. They're very clever things. And then we had geese for a bit.
I had some beautiful Sebastopol geese, didn't we?
Yeah. If you ever kept geese, they look great, but they're mean. They don't like people.
Very messy.
And they make a lot of noise. So they became Christmas dinner one year very quickly.
Right.
What else? And now we're into sheep. So we've got about 70 sheep.
Okay.
And you probably can see that on Instagram. The proud. So I kind of became a vet again because having lots of animals. So that was good fun.
Jason's very good at looking after them, trimming their feet and massaging their aching legs.
Very nice.
Very, very well cared for sheep, I must admit.
Yeah.
So I mean, is Jason treating the sheep better than he's treating you?
No,
not at all. Not at all. They sleep outside.
Yeah, so do you sometimes.
But they're beautiful. They're black and white Jacob sheep. It's a rare breed. I think a British breed of sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we've got the 2-horn variety.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
And I mean, between setting the menu that would be constantly changing, and between the accommodation that you have on site as well, and with the fun, like how do you manage all of this? It seems like
very ad hoc, I must admit.
It's definitely a 24/7.
Yeah,
24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's very very ad hoc though. I mean, it's funny. Days of old, people would turn up with 20 or 30 pheasants in the back of the Range Rover and said, "Here, Jay, I brought these for you," and that would be on the menu. That sort of silly things used to happen. We used to have a boy called Daniel who used to be part of a fishing syndicate, and he used to turn up with fish quite a lot. We had an awful lot of fish on the menu because of that boy.
We don't have time to do that anymore.
We do have some pretty crazy things. When we put an extension on the side of the pub, and because we used to only have 7 tables in the beginning, so we were a little small joint. When you came, the extension I think has been on and sort of gone from a very small little place to a much bigger place.
We doubled the number of covers, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but we turn tables and it's a bit nuts. For a little joint, we're pretty busy.
I think one of the best things I liked about staying with you was when we had dinner in the pub the night before. You would order your breakfast for the next morning at the same time. Oh, yeah.
It's quite an eccentric.
It is a funny way of doing it, but it makes life so much easier because
it does.
If you imagine you've got rooms that are coming in, that day, and they want to check in, and you're checking out at 11. And if you rock up to breakfast at sort of 9:30, and then I've got to cook you breakfast and then feed you, and then you've got to turn around and get back to your room, and then the poor lady who goes and cleans the rooms has to get them all ready. And for 4 of them, although there's only 4 rooms, it's just more efficient. We try not to make it seem like you're ordering 2 lots of meals at once, but
it's Jason cooks the breakfast, and he cooks it from scratch. So if you want full English, it's best to get it underway before you walk in.
Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
about cooking sausages and things like that, and they're proper thick things, and they take a good 20 minutes to cook a sausage from start to finish. And so, yeah, if it's good to have a bit of an idea, because don't forget, I've also got 40 or 50 people for lunch, so I've got to get you.
Yeah.
We've got to turn the restaurant over, turn the restaurant back in from breakfast service back to dinner service, because we're not that big. We don't have a room set aside just for brekkie. And then turn it around. So it's just, it's, it all works like clockwork these days. But in the beginning, it was just like, oh, Jesus.
I mean, it actually made, I mean, from a customer's perspective, I think it's great because you can be extra indulgent before you've even had your dinner, and then just sign off on it, forget about it, and don't worry about it, and then just go and enjoy. So when you wake up,
I'm all about being efficient. I really am. There doesn't seem to be enough time in the day, and I don't know. I don't know. We run the place with lots of young people and stuff, and we just have a system for everything, and that's just how we roll. I don't know. I don't know. It's the same sort of way we used to run it in Hong Kong, I think.
Lots of tick sheets.
Yeah, lots of things to follow.
And then we
the Wellington way or nothing.
Wellington way.
Yeah, so with the Wellington way on the highway.
Yeah, we've got a way for doing everything. Yeah. Clearing a table, washing a bench. Yeah, it's funny.
Well, we definitely can't ignore what's been going on around the world the last 2 years now, I guess. With the pandemic, and especially the impact that it's had on the hospitality industry. But and following you guys on Instagram and just kind of seeing, I think, the way that you've pivoted and grown the business. I was brushing up on a few things over the weekend, and seeing loaves of sourdough pop up, and homemade gin, and soups, and donuts, and ice cream, and pies. Like, it seems, it was it was very mouthwatering just scrolling through the pages of Instagram, and I was getting very jealous.
Thank you.
But tell us how you kind of had to handle all that.
Okay. Well, we've got a couple of politicians that eat in the pub, which is kind of convenient. So they kind of whispered that they might be shutting the pubs down.
Right.
So we didn't really believe it, but on the Friday night before the pub, so this is a week before, someone I watched the TV glued to it, thinking,
watch it every night.
We're going to
5 o'clock.
Yeah, we're going to shut the pubs down. And so I ran the kitchen down that Friday night. We sort of got down to the last few things and the last few bits of this and that and whatever, all readiness that, that this was all going to happen. Anyway, the news reporter did their job, and that was it. And then there was no shutdown. There was no nothing. It was just like, oh, far out. Okay, well, that was pointless. Looks like we're going to have a busy weekend. So I don't know about you, but running a kitchen, then trying to run it down, then try to speed it back up again is hard work, particularly on Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. So work like an absolute maniac to get it back up to running. And then the following weekend was Mother's Day. And then there was talk again that they were going to shut the pubs and they're going to shut this. And I thought, there's no way Boris is going to do this. It's Mother's Day. This is one of our busiest weeks. This is intense because everybody and his dog wants to come to the pub on that week. And we have so much food in the cool room. And lo and behold, on Friday, they shut the pub. And I had about 15 grand worth of food.
It was 5 o'clock, Boris said, pubs and restaurants tonight have to close.
We had 70 or 80 bookings that evening, and the rest of the week was just insane.
Yeah. And
I had so much food in the fridge. Roasts and huge animals, and it was just nuts. So I'm looking in this fridge going, I can't throw this food out. This is insane. So I said to Simon, why don't you call up the customers and get them to come and buy takeaway, and we'll put a trestle table outside the front of the pub, and we turn the floodlights on and threw some tablecloths down and made it look like, I don't know, a farmer's market, I suppose. It was a bit crap, but it was all right. It was very ad hoc, like everything we do. And we sold food in our dishes and our plates and anything else that we had as a container to put the food that we had that we were going to sell to customers. So it was all sort of portioned up as like, fish this and something else, and steaks and stuff, and said, look, please bring back the dishes and we'll see you next week. Because, we didn't have any idea. I didn't think about possibly asking them to have a deposit. Well, some brought back the dishes and some didn't. So, and then it was that night that I had this idea that we could start doing this sort of takeaway in a container. And I'm a bit of a snob, and I just did not want to cook in takeaway styrofoam containers or foil containers and stuff. And we have always been zero waste at the pub. So it was for that reason too, I didn't want to do that. We have so little garbage. We have one black garbage bin a week of rubbish, and we do about 450 covers. So we're pretty.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is. We, compost a lot on site and do all sorts of silly things, like crazy things. And so I got Simon to find us a container on a website, and it's just a nice table container you could put on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a white porcelain dish.
That's it.
And roasting dish.
And he managed to get our stamp in it, which is quite good, and our logo in the bottom of the dish. And I think he ordered 400 of them. And they were delivered, I think, on the Tuesday. So we started doing pies and that, takeaway cottage pies and lasagnas and all sorts of different things. Anything that would fit in that damn dish. But we charged them a deposit this time, and it worked a bit like Video Blockbuster. You had to pay a deposit, and then you had to bring the dish back. And if you brought the dish back, then you had to buy another pie. So it went sort of a bit of a revolving door. And I think we've got about 2,000 of those damn dishes circulating in the globe at the moment.
I think at one stage, I think you did send a call out to like all
please bring
your
them
customers.
back.
Yeah, like some of you haven't brought your dishes back. Please bring them back.
Because the company went to lockdown as well, so they wouldn't provide us with any more dishes.
Couldn't get any more.
So we'd already bought some, and then we rang them up to buy some more. It was called La Porcelana, I think.
That's right.
And they were having some problems, and they had to close down, so we weren't able to buy any more dishes. So for the whole thing, it was like, please bring your dishes back, and we'll cook you some more food.
And so the other thing was Jason was cooking all this food, which he had in containers in the walk-in fridge. And we couldn't sell it because we had nothing to put them in.
Right.
So quite good. People are really good. Honestly, I've never been one for Instagram or one for social media of any kind. I've only had a mobile phone for a couple of years. And I know I'm that backward. It's funny, isn't it? I can't believe it. And I had no idea. Instagram is amazing for getting people to pay attention to what you're doing. It's incredible. And the things that we did over lockdown really kept people informed about how we were doing things and what we were doing. And we did some pretty nuts things. I mean, that the Good Life takeoff with the spinning pie and the chickens going. It was really cool. We had a lot of fun doing it, but it took ages to do. They're all for a 30-second video.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Thank God we employ so many young people at the pub, because I would never have been able to do it on my own.
And that kind of and that essentially kept you guys going, throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a queue of people up the street buying pies and buying soup and stuff. I had no idea that people just don't cook anymore.
Well, they were tired of cooking, weren't they? They were just tired of it.
I had a bloke who turned up, and I'm handing over this cottage pie to him. He said, "It's good to eat, isn't it?" And I went, well, yeah, if you put it in the oven. He said, what? I can't eat it now. And I went, no, it's not cooked. He said, well, it looks cooked. And I went, well, the mash is cooked and the thing underneath is cooked, mate, but you got to cook it some more. And he looked mortified. So I said, come on, you just put it in the oven at home, and 40 minutes later it'll be ready. He said, don't worry, it'll be all right. Just make some peas or a salad and you'll be okay.
Make sure he cooks it. I was just reading about that chef it was Northern England, wasn't it?
Oh shit! Don't compare me to that fella. That guy didn't know what he was doing. I know, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well,
he made a lot of people sick. No. But I do worry about what people do with dinner that they take away from home, because how long does it sit in the fridge? I mean, I honestly, I'd never done a takeaway restaurant before, and I mean, we had a deli in Hong Kong, but I suppose I never really considered what people did when they bought it. They take it home in the fridge for a week, and it's crazy stuff. I mean, in Australia, where we've always been a bit uptight about takeaway food.
Yeah, it's especially like going to eat at a restaurant and then taking food with you. Like
you've got to sign a document.
Yeah,
you've got to sign a document to say, you will look after this thing, and you will put it in your fridge, and you will eat it within a day or two of taking it home, and we will not be responsible for what you do with it. Yeah, we've always been a bit uptight about that in Australia. So, you know, when we started doing it here, I was thinking to myself, come on, you don't look that savvy. I'm worried you might leave this in the back of the car for a while too long. So, yeah, it does. It's a concern. I think
it's also one of those positive things, you know, at least something positive that maybe came out of, you know, the whole pandemic experience is that for restaurants and bars even, you know, it did open up a new way for, you know, them to kind of engage with customers and sell more. You know, even here, like, you know, in California, you could do takeaway cocktails all of a sudden, and they've kept that going.
Well, I think we all had to, because we just didn't have as Simon and I, because we're business owners, we take a dividend of the profits. So technically, we aren't the employee. You know, we are paid a very small wage through PAYE. And that's just efficient through taxation. But all employers are pay themselves the same way. They take the profit, and their profit is their wage. So when dear old Boris decided to furlough everybody, if you're an owner of a company, not a self-employed person, you're screwed. You've got no income because you can't live on the money that you pay yourself currently to get through paying national insurance and all that sort of stuff. You just pay yourself the minimum, which is about £400 a month. And he and I can't live on £400 a month each. We've got 2 children, and we've got mortgages, and we've got bills to pay. And so we just, the idea of being furloughed and sitting on our asses and watching Netflix all day long, you know, it wouldn't be something we could have done. And thank God we didn't do it. You know, I just looked in the fridge that day and I couldn't throw away all this food. Yeah. And some of my mates did, and they've gone broke. And then when they went to back up to reopen, they didn't have any staff either, because they, you know, all the staff were sitting at home. Didn't come back. Some of them didn't. Where we kept the kitchen going, we employed everybody. We only furloughed, you know, a few people, and then, you know, it was out of necessity, really. But I think we had a better experience than some people because we were kept active, and we did get to do a lot of fun things. And we fed a lot of people, which was good fun. We did some really stupid things during lockdown to keep us entertained. That cocktail thing we did, that was really good fun. We did pints by the, you know, takeaway pints. That was fun too. Yeah. It was very funny having blokes turning up, buying pints and walking out the door with them. Honestly, it seems every day when I think about it, it still seems like some sort of bizarre dream that we had. I still can't believe we survived it.
We're making sausage rolls, quiches, pies, amazing cakes.
Yeah.
Victoria sandwich.
I got this woman called Helen who works for me, and she's just the most incredible baker and pastry chef. And we were making some stupid things. She makes cockroach buns and coffee
and walnut cake.
The poor woman would get to work at the crack of dawn and work her ass off and then drive home and come back and do it again.
People were buying whole cakes. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was, we were very fortunate with the people who work for us. We were able to pull on all their talents to turn our business into, something else over that period. You know, Lucy doing Instagram and doing all the stupid things I thought we could do. And she'd be like, I don't think we've got an app for that. But I'll look. And 20 minutes later, she'd come back with some editing app, and we'd come up with some other silly thing. We were very, very fortunate. And poor old Sheila having to, manage the whole restaurant and deal with people coming in and cancelling bookings and refunding money and then trying to find a bag of salad for somebody in the cool room. And I'm surprised she didn't murder me at any time. It's just, we wouldn't have been able to do it without the people who work for us, because it wasn't just him and I. There's a load of people running around doing stuff.
Yeah.
It was, and then Simon and I took on 2 foster kids. If the pandemic couldn't get any worse.
Oh, that was during the pandemic.
That was in the first 2 weeks. Yeah, the first 2 weeks of lockdown, wow. And shit. It was
That's great.
Crazy. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a bit of an experience.
It still is.
It still is. I'll be home soon, so you'll be able to hear a lot of clatter in a second.
And we have Christmas is just around the corner. And I actually, again, I was it sounds like I'm obsessed with your Instagram, but there was I saw that you were making Christmas pudding ice cream.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, we are. Yeah, we make it.
When I saw that, during the pandemic, I bought myself like one of those big kind of expensive ice cream makers, and my wife murdered me at the time. but then when I started actually, churning out some ice cream, she's like, "Okay, I forgive you."
I'll have to send you a recipe.
But that talk me through just to start with Christmas, that Christmas pudding ice cream, because it looks
in Hong Kong.
Amazing.
We were the group that I worked for were only one of 3 places that had a license to make ice cream. It's hard to believe that in those days you just had to have a license
to make ice cream. Okay,
because I think hygiene wasn't too hot in those days,
right?
And so we had a license, and so I would make weird and wonderful ice creams all day long because it was something that we could sell in our business, and so all of our restaurants had ice cream and stuff. So I was always making weird and wonderful flavors and things. So I suppose when we took on the restaurant, what we have now, we've always made some pretty weird things. The Christmas pudding ice cream, well, it's had lots of, initially it was just Christmas puddings that we crumbled up and put into ice cream, but that was always had sort of a grainy flavor. And then I made mincemeat one year, and I put that into the ice cream and then didn't think about the fat would then solidify, and that wouldn't be very good. So that was a bit of a failure. And then later on, we just made mincemeat without the fat and then cooked it the same way and then spooned that through the ice cream. And that's been the basic recipe that we've used from then on. And it's just mind-blowing. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. Just trying to get the alcohol right. So if you put too much booze in it, the ice cream won't set.
Yeah.
But it works well, and it's a good thing.
It's a very good seller.
Yeah, it
sells really well.
It does. We've made 3 or 4 batches already. We thought we'd just make a few batches and that'll get us ready for Christmas. But no, all of it's gone already, and I've got to make it again tomorrow. Yes. It keeps the coffers filled.
I'm definitely not surprised that it's all gone. I'm not surprised.
It's really tasty. It's incredibly tasty. It's incredibly tasty, actually. We actually made mince pie ice cream last week because we screwed some mince pies up. We buttered the dishes. We buttered the dishes to put the mince pies in, but whoever buttered them didn't butter them well, and Helen was not happy. So these terrific mince pies that look fantastic just couldn't come out of the molds. So as I'm trying to placate her, I'm going, it's okay. I'm sure we can fix it. I'm sure we can do something with it. I'm thinking, we're never going to be able to fix this. And she was baking ice cream at the time. I said, I'll tell you what, we'll crumble it up and we'll put it through some ice cream and it won't be wasted. It'll be fine. Anyway, we were trying it. It's actually really good. Thankfully, she was a lot happier after that. So now mince pie ice cream, but we're not sure what we're going to call it because it sounds like a very strange very strange ice cream. We've come up with a better label. But that's how it is at the pub. It's always really ad hoc. We screw something up and then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
Or someone turns up with something and we think, oh Christ, what are we going to do with this? It's always a bit sort of like ready, steady, cook at the pub on a big scale.
And what does the rest of the Christmas season look like for you guys at the pub? I mean, do you actually open on Christmas or do you close down?
Yeah. Christmas is huge for us.
It's our 17th Christmas working.
Christmas Day pays for January.
Wow.
We tend to take 3 or 4 weeks off in January. Somehow I just work 7 days a week and we don't stop. So we tend to take 3. Well, it used to be 2 weeks, and somehow he seemed to.
I managed to get 3 out of them.
Somehow we were on holiday, and I didn't realise we weren't going home.
Jason's packing his bags, and then we've got another week.
That was a bit of a shock. But now that we've got the children, I think holidays are going to have to be curtailed. There's school education to be paid for, and all sorts of things. So I'm not sure how this Christmas is going to work out.
We're open all the way through Christmas Day, Boxing Day.
Yep.
And, yeah.
And what's on the menu usually for a Christmas Day lunch at the Wellington Arms?
There always has to be turkey. One year there was goose, as I said, I think earlier, and that was very popular. Surprisingly, people are very traditional around us, and turkey was what's required. And I gave them goose, and I don't think they were that happy. So it's definitely going to be turkey.
But the cheese soufflé features, doesn't it, as a starter?
It has to be. Yeah, that bloody thing.
That's one of the most popular things we have.
I make that twice a day. It drives me crazy. I think I've made 100,000 bloody freaking soufflés.
This year alone.
Oh, it makes me crazy.
That's a lot of soufflé.
Because you can buy them now to take away. I thought my job couldn't get any harder, and now I've got people who have them in the restaurant and have them to take away, and it's like, Jesus, mate, give me a break here. Thanks to Stephanie Alexander for the basis of that recipe.
Okay,
I met Stephanie. I never got to work for Stephanie. I applied to work for her. She was away in Florence at the time. I got a very nice letter back. Very nice letter back saying that she's away. Maybe you should try somewhere else. So that's how I got to work for Fanny's. And I ran into Stephanie a couple of times over the years when I was a young fella. And she always remembered me. She was amazing. She had an incredible name for faces. Amazing. She always remembered me. And then we went to the Culinary Olympics, and one of the girls who worked for her was on the team. And I ran into her there. It's funny. And so her recipe for the cheese soufflé is the one that I use at the pub with a few additions these days. So thanks to her. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have a business. She's an amazing woman. Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago. We were the hosts of First Dates Christmas special.
I forgot about that.
So it's a TV show in the UK where singletons are matched together.
Okay.
And they have first dates in a restaurant. And so we were fortunate to be chosen for
the pub in the country, I think.
Yeah, we were the First Dates Christmas special, the country pub. And they took over the pub for about 5 days, I think it was.
Yeah, we had 150 people running around decorating the pub to make it look like a TV set. It was insane.
Absolutely insane.
I've never seen so many people.
10 people decorated the pub for Christmas all day. 7 Christmas trees. They spent 4 times the budget on decorations.
It was over the top. Like
there were fairy lights everywhere.
Yeah. It was definitely a different take on what we would call Christmas decorations, but I'll just leave it at that. But it was just over the top. It
worked so well on television.
Pretty crazy stuff. Yeah.
And they recorded 10 couples in one day.
Oh, so it wasn't just one couple at the pub and they chose multiple restaurants. Like you were the restaurant and it was for the whole
People
special.
came from all over the UK to eat in our restaurant, so it's at the Wellington Arms. And they were recorded from, I think the first turkey went out at about 11 o'clock in the morning, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. The magic of television.
And Jason was cooking Christmas lunch from 11 in the morning till 11 at night.
2 at night. It was crazy. They didn't want to stop filming.
And so they recorded 10 couples and we had lots of diners in that were out of our guests that filled in.
Yeah.
To make the place look busy.
Yeah, we had to come up with an audience for them.
Yeah, and we
had so many people wanted the job.
So they actually made 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And and then there were 3 couples per episode. And so it was great. We did 2. We had the first showing was on Christmas Day, 2019.
It was a huge blast for us because we got all that publicity. And they said to us, can we pay you for for using the pub? And I said, well, no, the advertising alone is what getting from you guys is going to be terrific.
Yeah.
Because it said got the Wellington Arms on the front of the pub. And so I was like, this is going to be amazing for us. And then through editing, they edited out everything that said the Wellington Arms because it was the BBC and they couldn't publicise it.
Oh, so no.
Really, really clever. It turned out to be this nice white pub that they drove up to with no branding, no nothing on it.
Oh, bugger.
Had everything out, like shortbreads with a little stamp on it and everything about the Wellington Arms. They what do they call it? They call it airbrushing.
Yeah.
They airbrushed the whole lot.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it was a bit of a bugger, actually.
Actually, speaking of television, you guys are very close to where they film Downton Abbey, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
That's why Highclere Castle is 15-minute drive from the pub. Yeah.
Lady Carnarvon's is really good and she supports the pub. She's brilliant. She sends lots of customers to us.
Oh,
she's brilliant.
Beautiful.
We stock their gin behind the bar as well. Highclere Castle gin.
She's as mad as a cut snake, Lady Carnarvon. She does these Instagrams at 11 o'clock and they're very funny. She has so many followers. Very funny. It could be something as simple as chopping down a tree. but she makes it out to be hilarious.
And then during lockdown, she invited me over.
Oh, yes.
She wanted some food from the deli to prepare for their, I think it was their wedding anniversary, or maybe her husband's, Lord Carnarvon's birthday.
It was. Yeah.
So I delivered the food to the castle, and she was there with her team to record an Instagram as I handed over this hamper of food, which is fantastic. We had more likes on Instagram than we've ever had.
Yeah.
Thanks to Lord and Lady Carnarvon.
And do you remember the joke when she said, she said, "Oh, I really like sourdough," and you said, "I'll get the starter," and she said, "But you brought me a starter." You know, she really didn't get it. It was really funny. She was mortified to think maybe we've left something behind. She's really, she's lovely. She's really lovely. That first dates thing, oh my goodness, I could never be in television. Oh my, there were so many takes. You know, being a chef and you take food out of the oven, you want the customer to get that then and there. You know, the soup.
Sure, yeah.
And then the food will be going out, and then you get a scene back saying, "Hang on a minute, we can't send out now. That they're talking and there's something interesting happening, so we can't interrupt them." And I had to cook a soufflé a dozen times over just so that we could go back out and get the shot. I was ready to kill somebody by the end.
And Jason, ring the bell, the soufflé is ready, the cheese is on the top, and then the waitress from the TV would be there. A makeup artist would come in and adjust the makeup, put on, oh, there goes the doorbell. She'd adjust the lipstick, and the soufflé is beginning to sort of collapse.
Oh, no.
So they would throw another one back in the oven and then do it all over again. And we just did that all day. And Fred was so funny because Fred has an enormous appetite. So he just kept eating. I've never seen a man eat as much food as he has. He loves his dinner. And so he would be hanging around the kitchen in between takes just saying, "So what else can I have?" He was a funny chap. He was a very funny
it was good fun.
I've never had to feed so many people in such a short space of time. They were endless. And we had to feed the crew, and they told me the crew would be 20 people.
You were also feeding the crew?
Yeah, well, no, that's what happened. It was, we were feeding the crew, and they said there would just be 20 people got to feed.
Yeah.
But I think the first day they really liked the food, and then the next day there were 40 people, and the next day there were 50 people, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? I seem to be feeding more people every day, feeding them food.
Word had clearly gotten out, and it's like, you have to come and work on this show because the food is so good.
That's what I think was happening, because we had all these the crew members just seemed to multiply, and we had a crew tent, and it was getting a bit silly at one point. I was like, guys, hang on a minute, what's going on here? I've never made so many dinners for so many different people, and they just kept appearing from nowhere. It's a bit of an adventure. I certainly would not want to be in TV. My hat's off to anybody who's involved in telly, because it's a lot of hard work.
And what is, like, as we, try to emerge from the last couple of years of, pretty ordinary times, what do you guys have planned for the future with the pub, and how do you see yourself?
Well, I don't know. The pandemic cost us a fortune.
Right.
I wouldn't want to tell you how much money it cost us, because I'm still trying to grapple it myself. So we're sort of a bit behind with what we were going to do. We had a greenhouse planned, and we had a couple more rooms planned, but that all got kind of shelved. Just because the money just got gobbled up with just the running costs.
And we're not back up to speed with the number of staff we've got either.
No, because we're busy and we're full and stuff like that. We're still short a couple of chefs, and we're still short a couple of waiters. So if anybody wants a job, we're hiring.
recruiting chefs, recruiting waiters.
But then I think the whole world's short of staff all of a sudden. It's really weird.
It's incredible.
Everyone went to Mars. It's really weird.
We now have to close on Sunday because we can't make the lovely people we've got work any harder than they do already.
Oh, really? Okay.
We're short staffed. That's why we can't make them work. We're just short staffed, so we can't run the thing. But also, we've got the kids these days, so it's sort of, it works and it doesn't work. I still find myself going to work on Sunday and on Monday, even though we're closed. But just trying to keep up with what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because the takeaways is another part of what keeps the restaurant going. So, yeah.
And that's something you want to keep up and keep going.
Well, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. It makes it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we sort of, obviously the restaurant's got a capacity, and we can't take any more bookings. We have more seats. So it's just another level of the business that we're making some money on. I think it'd be stupid to stop doing it.
Yeah.
So many dishes we need to fill.
Yeah.
We do, because people bring them back. Thank goodness. Yeah, and it's popular. And it's really sweet because people use it as a dinner party. So they'll have, if they don't come to us or whatever, they'll have our food at home. So it works. Yeah, it really works. I mean, there were lots of Australian restaurants that did that. I think there were lots of places. I'm trying to think of the one that's really, really, the one in the country. What's that called?
In Victoria?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jesus,
Bray.
That's it, Bray. Gee, thank you. I never would have got. They were doing the same thing as well. And I remember lots of posts from him saying, which I copied one of them. He said, your business will survive if you've got a decent lasagna recipe.
Oh, that's right.
Which I must admit I've used a few times because we make it mean lasagna, which is a bit of a joke. If you're a decent chef and you've been cooking for a long time and you're having to ask your mother, how do you make a lasagna? It definitely improved. I think the first one I made wasn't too hot. It definitely improved over time.
Yeah, it's very good.
Well, this has been fantastic to chat to you both and hear about the Wellington Arms and how it all started and where you guys
Thank
are
you.
now.
Very much.
Yeah, definitely been loving what you guys have been doing and can't wait to see what's coming next, and hopefully you can get some of the projects back on track with the greenhouse and the room extensions.
Yeah, well, that's going to be next year if we can pull it off. Yeah, it'd be quite good. I must admit, it's very funny talking to you, being Australian, hearing your twang on the way back. You're definitely more Ocker than I am. It's really lovely listening to you.
I'm trying to. I mean, I've been living in the US for 10 years now, and I've just been doing everything I can to hang on to my accent, because if I started to lose it, I think my mother would disown me. So.
I get more Ocker if you give me a couple of beers, but it's a bit early in the day.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and that's it. I mean, anytime I actually go back and visit and I start hanging around with my friends, within a few days, it's much more thick, and it's.
You sound like Pauline Hanson.
hopefully not that bad, but thank you again, guys, and have a very Merry Christmas and all the best moving forward.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.